Please note, the following video is a detailed critique of a film and as such will contain major spoilers which are unavoidable. If you have not watched this film and do not wish to know in advance what happens, then please stop this video now. David Lynch's debut feature film drops us into the head of Henry Spencer, a lonely figure who lives in a dirty, depressing world. On arriving at his apartment, he's greeted with the news from the beautiful girl across the hall that his estranged girlfriend Mary has asked him to dinner at her parents' house. This provokes a little hope into the life of Henry, who's obviously given up on the relationship at that point. On arriving and participating in a bizarre meal of man-made tiny little chickens, Henry learns that he's a father and that the child, premature and deformed, is at the hospital. Forced to take Mary and the child home to support them, Henry's world is turned upside down as the child becomes the centre of attention day and night, driving Mary away again and leaving Henry to look after the sick mutant child by himself. After a while Mary returns and after sleeping fitfully apparently gives birth to some sperm-like creatures, the likes of which we saw in the opening sequence, which Henry kills, throwing them against a wall. With Mary gone again, Henry has a brief affair with the beautiful girl across the hall, and he comes face to face with the lady in the radiator, a figure that he's fixated on for some time, and who it seems Henry can't touch without being bathed in an incredibly bright white light. The man from the planet also reappears, and after seemingly being put on trial, judged by his dead pot plant that has no pot, Henry's head falls off to be replaced by that of the baby's. His actual head rolls away and falls through the floor, only to be recovered by a young boy who takes it to the factory where a core of Henry's brain is extracted and used to create Eraserheads for the pencils they produce. After waking from this dream, he seeks out the beautiful girl across the hall, only to find she is seeing another man. He returns to his apartment, where the ever-demanding baby becomes ever more demanding. Henry takes a pair of scissors and cuts away the baby's ever-present swaddling, only to find out that there is no flesh beneath them, only internal organs, with nothing to contain them. In an act that can only be described as a very late-term abortion, Henry stabs the organs with the scissors, killing the baby. The man on the planet struggles with the levers he's manipulated throughout the film, as they and the apartment explode in showers of electrical sparks. Henry is suddenly in a bright white world with the lady in the radiator, where they embrace, and the shot cuts to black. From the outset, it's important to realise that the world we're looking into is entirely that of Henry's. Eraserhead is a deeply psychological film that enters his perception of the world around him. The dream, or rather nightmare qualities of Eraserhead come from a mysterious hypnagogic, that is, dreamlike or hallucinatory images that are presented to us. The main concern of Eraserhead is sex, its drives, its consequences. From the opening shot, we are given a metaphoric sex scene where Henry is seemingly floating in a dark place. When Henry regurgitates a distorted sperm-like creature, the man on the planet moves into life and fires the creature off into a flooded tunnel. When you approach the scene from this point of view, then many things begin to make sense. There's an alienation of the act of sex in the man from another planet's control of the mechanical process of impregnation. Perhaps this could be seen as taking the human element out of the physical process, a way of explaining the drive to have sex as being beyond humanity, something that is alien to the expectations that to be human is to be in control of our instincts. Or rather that the sexual act driven by the natural need to reproduce is not necessarily performed consciously for that purpose. As such, the functional element of sex can seem alien to our immediate and conscious reasons for the act. Also, it suggests that man creates only so much in the reproductive process, which is then entirely out of his control from that point. A very disempowering position to be in, and yet another thing that alienates Henry from the world. This, of course, is all very abstract, and is, as I say, a very psychological point of view. It's about the sensations and feelings of the act as Henry experiences it, a metaphoric depiction of the act, not the reality of it. The final shot of this scene is suggestive of the culmination of the act, birth, as we emerge into the harsh bright light from the darkness of the womb. We then enter the world of Eraserhead. It's a dark, oily, dirty and cold place, an industrial nightmare that is as dead as it is poisonous. This world, whilst being more literal than the opening scene, remained very much a part of Henry's psyche, with its uncomfortable, desolate scenery that dwarfs him. Its utterly overwhelming and imposing scale isolates him as he almost waddles through the landscape, an alien in his own world. In a cut scene, Henry gets his foot caught in a piece of wire that's attached to a dead cat. As he tries to free himself, the cat is animated into a grotesque parody of life, Henry's only contribution to the world. When Henry returns home, his neighbour, the beautiful girl across the hall, has taken a message for him. His ex-girlfriend, Mary X, has phoned to invite him over to dinner, something that troubles Henry. He drops a penny into a bowl of water, a wishing well of sorts maybe, and puts the two torn pieces of Mary's photo back together as hope springs for some kind of companionship. This is not, however, what he will find with Mary. Arriving at the X family home, we find one of Lynch's familiar muses with a twisted representation of the familiar, the American family. The family are bizarre, from the surname X, which implies an anonymity or generic nature to who they are. They may as well have been called the Doe family, to their behaviour, which consists of the father's mad anecdotal rantings.
I'm Henry.
Henry's at Lapel's factory.
Well, printing's your business, huh? Plumbing's mine. 30 years. I've seen this neighborhood change from pastures to the hellhole it is now. I'd put every damn pipe in this neighborhood.
Yeah, they'll...
Now, people think pipes grow in their home. Well, they sure as hell don't. Look at my knee. Look at my knee.
The mother's intense interrogation of Henry, and of course the woman's spasmodic outbursts.
You'll be all right in a minute.
Again, it's rather important to realise that this is Henry's point of view. The family are something that he cannot relate to or understand. His alienation from family life is rather extreme, and as he learns from Mrs. X that Mary has just had his child, he finds himself forced into heading a family of his own. Lynch's take on the family through the eyes of Henry in a way parodies the notion of family itself, the heightened characters that plays on clichés of the innocent family home, and the adulterous advances of Mrs. X are given a further sense of contrivance and artificiality by the lighting, which is very theatrical in nature. A notion that's topped off with a rather amusing visual that is strikingly similar to the masks of comedy and tragedy that are iconic of theatrical performance. The notion of the family as a performance of kind containing codes and conventions, albeit rather exaggerated, certainly an interesting one, that seems to tell of Henry's feelings towards such a situation. We don't know anything of Henry's family, mother, father, siblings. All these things are entirely absent from the story, and this is possibly a clue to his feelings regarding the family unit. The relationship between Henry and Mary, which in the first place had been dealt a fatal blow with a previous break-up, suffers immediately from the pressure of raising an unwanted invalid and constantly demanding child, who wails through the night. Henry, ever the escapist, takes refuge in his imagination, eventually introducing us to the lady in the radiator, an angelic, though deformed character, who seems to be a supportive element in Henry's life. The lady seems to be the polar opposite of the man from the planet. Her world is warm, dry, reassuring, where the man's world is cold, hard, wet and threatening. The two characters seem to represent opposite ends of sex, the man the most basic function of reproduction and sex drive, and the lady being about control of these drives and transcending the urges to have sex. In some parts she also represents the separation of sex and reproduction, when she stamps on the creatures raining down around her, possibly a metaphorical birth control. In heaven everything is fine is a further indicator of the lady of the radiator as a source of solace for Henry, a promise of better things beyond the hell-like world in which he exists. But its lyrics also betray the selfishness of Henry, a man that's so isolated and insular that he can't form a relationship of any substance, to who the act of sex is reduced to its most self-serving. What follows is one of the most enigmatic sequences in this film. Henry comes face to face with the lady in the radiator, and when he touches her he's bathed in a blinding white light. The lady disappears to be replaced by the man from the planet, and the shriveled up sperm-like creatures blow across the floor. A large version of the potless pot plant rolls on, and Henry stands behind the dock, seemingly put on trial, during which his head is thrown off by what can only be described as a phallic projection. The baby's head then takes its place, wailing terribly. Henry's detached head lies on the floor in a pool of blood given off by the plant, only to fall through the floor into the industrial landscape of before. It's retrieved by a young boy who takes it to a pencil factory, where a core of brain matter is removed and fed into a machine that attaches the eraser tips onto pencils. After ejecting a pencil from the machine, it's tested on a piece of paper, and the eraser head is declared OK. Then the fragments of the eraser are brushed off the table, dispersing into the air. This sequence, odd as it is, has a lot happening. Henry's guilt and shame about sex leads to the trial. the disappearance of the lady and the reappearance of the man from the planet being a conflict of the emotions Henry feels towards the act, with the man's functionality having the final say. This trial confirms Henry's guilt and the phallus takes his head. It's at this point when the baby's head replaces Henry's own that the baby's identity, or rather function, is made clear. The child in this itself is a phallic image, its shape, its appearance being somewhat akin to a nightmarish representation of male genitalia, its constant moaning and baying for attention being somewhat akin to a libidinous drive, always there, always crying for attention, demanding and inescapable. Now Henry's libido has won over him as a person. He's essentially a slave to the need for sex, and his guilt is inescapable. His head is taken to the factory in the oddest scene in the film, where his brain is used to create erasers for pencils, perhaps an indication of denial, the brain being used to erase the marks of the transgressions of the body, which allows him to carry on doing what he's doing. Henry then wakes up. He seeks the beautiful lady who it appears has moved on to another man, much to his distress. Her vision of him with the child's head suggesting her motivation for the sexual advances, and perhaps how she perceives his. Henry, visibly upset, then takes a pair of scissors to the baby's swaddling, cutting it open to reveal its innards, most notably a pair of testicle-looking organs that he stabs at in an obscure act of castration, removing the functionality, killing the drive. On the planet loses control, and finally Henry is reunited with the lady in the radiator, who he can now be with, free from the uncontrolled urge to procreate. They embrace, Henry's face a picture of both serenity and sadness, or possibly relief. They're both bathed in pure bright white light. There are many readings of this film. Some emphasise a fear of parenthood as the theme, others adultery, but most of these ideas seem rather concentrated on sections of the film rather than the film as a whole. I hope this interpretation is a more complete approach. The theme of sex, its drives and its consequences, indeed sex as a monster, runs constantly throughout the film. The imagery and the ideas seem to point heavily in this direction, as I hope I have demonstrated. No doubt there will be some disagreement on some points, if not many points. This is a film that's confounded many critics, and as Lynch himself has noted, no critic or reviewer has so far echoed his interpretation. He refuses to spell it out, and that's a wise and more productive thing for him to do. He effectively gives the movie to us to see how we choose to see it. This is simply my reading, and I hope you can find as much in this film as I do.
That's all.